Welcome back to the second video for Part 3 Directories. Where I'm going to start now is with a utility called DiskPart, and before I started this video I wanted to experiment with some things, make sure they were going to work like I thought they were going to work. So you'll see three different commands there of DiskPart. Now, unlike other commands that I've used and shown you, DiskPart is its own complete program that opens up a separate window for you to enter commands in. So there's going to be some things that I'm going to talk about that are going to be in the Part 3 Directories addendum that I need to include, because after I got this done I started creating the video, I realized there was a couple of things I did not include in the DiskPart slide, talking about a couple of commands. There's a lot of commands DiskPart gives you, but there was a couple I wanted to show you right off the bat. You don't have to worry, the items in the addendum will not be on the quiz, so just to let you know about that. But to use DiskPart, you simply type the word DiskPart, as you can see it on the screen there. And when you're in user mode, it always asks you if you want to allow the program to make changes to the computer, because this program makes changes to the computer, so you have to be a little bit careful using it. So I'm simply going to click yes, and you get your own little window open. Now, I just want to warn you that because I've already been playing with DiskPart, the window appears with a white background and black text, just like my primary window. But normally the first time you actually invoke DiskPart, it opens up as a white text on black window, the default that you see whenever you open the command prompt window. So after, when I opened up this initially, I changed the colors, so this would be a bit easier to read, I hope. So I'm going to increase the size of the window here a little bit. Now the first thing I want to talk about is how you get help in DiskPart. So unlike the other commands, you cannot type help DiskPart at the command prompt and get information about it. You have to start up DiskPart in order to get help information. So you can simply type help at the DiskPart prompt, and notice here you now have a new prompt that's completely separate from your previous or your primary command line window. And I'm going to type the command help, and actually before I press enter I want to make the window a little bit bigger because there's a lot of commands. So I want to see if I can get them all displayed in one window. And yes, I did. So there's a lot of different things you can do. And notice here's the assign command, which is what I'm going to use to change drive letters for a thumb drive I have already mounted, that I don't care if I fool around with that thumb drive. And then there's some other about deleting objects, which can be defined as volumes. We're not going to get in a lot of detail with DiskPart. There's a lot here which would take up a lot of time, but I want to explore the help command a little bit more, the assign command, the list command, and the format command. Alright, so we're here in DiskPart. So how do you get information about the individual commands? Well, what you do is you type help, oops, if I could type correctly, H-E-L-P, and then you list the command next. So I'll get help on the assign command. And so you get information on how to use that particular command. Now just an aside, one of the things listed here is, you notice when it says letter equals and then a letter in angle brackets, you do not type in the angle brackets. And as a matter of fact, the equals is optional, so you can use equals or you don't have to use the equal sign. But if you don't use the equal sign, there has to be a space before the option and then what you specify for the option. So one of the other commands that I do have in the full PowerPoint is the list command. So if I type help list, it gives you several things that you can list. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to list the volumes that are connected. So when I list the volumes, notice it doesn't say volumes with an S on the end of it, just volume. So that's all you type in. And that lists all the connected volumes on my computer right now. So there's a D, there's our D drive. On a DVD-ROM, there's my C. There's two thumb drives I have plugged in now. I have Mark Miller and Mark Miller 3. It lists the file system on these drives. So the standard Windows file system now is NTFS, which literally stands for New Technology File System. It tells me how big the partition is. So there's a system restore partition that's 350 meg in case I need to restore. And then right now the partition I've got Windows on is only 63 gig. And it tells you that that's the boot partition. And then it gives me the sizes of my thumb drives. The one I'm going to be playing with, Mark Miller 3, is only a gig in size. It's listed in thousands of megabytes instead of GB. I'm not sure why. Notice this partition is listed as gigabytes, but for some reason I think it has to do with, because the file system is FAT32, the old prior version of the file systems, and I believe the FAT32 only went up to megabytes, so it doesn't recognize gigabytes, it recognizes so many thousands of megabytes. At any rate, before you actually fool around with an object, whether it's a disk, partition, volume, or virtual disk, and we're not going to talk about virtual disk at all, we're just going to be dealing with volumes for this discussion, you need to select it. So the next command that you can use is select. And you select the object and the object number you want to work with. So we're going to be working with volume, so I want to select volume 4. Alright, so there's the select. So it tells me volume 4 is selected, and by the way, just like with the regular command line, you can use the up arrow to retrieve previous used commands. And notice to the left of volume 4 is an asterisk, so that lets you know when you use list volume what volume you've got currently selected. Now previously when I was talking about drive letters, I had mentioned that you can reassign drive letters. And that A and B are by default reserved for using diskette drives. And it did show that the A drive is already assigned to a diskette drive, but it also, the B drive wasn't listed anywhere. So I could reassign Mark Miller 3 to the B drive, but there's a couple of ways I have to do it. I actually have to do two things. So I have to remove the drive letter F that's currently assigned to Mark Miller 3 and then assign the drive letter B to Mark Miller 3. So to reuse drive letters, you can unassign them and reassign them as needed using the disk part command. So to do that, First thing we needed to do was select it, which we've already done. And then I'm going to remove letter F. Now I don't have to type it F in uppercase, but I just did that to make sure you could read it clearly. So I'm removing letter F. Now notice I do not say anything about the volume. Because it's already selected, all the commands that I use affect the volume I've got selected. So there's good and bad about that. The good is I don't always have to tell it the volume. The bad is if I forget what volume I've got selected and issue a destructive command like format, then I'm in real trouble. Alright, but we're going to remove letter F from this volume. So I'm going to do that, and you get either a success message or a failure message. This one was successfully. So let me list volume again, and you notice there's no drive letter assigned to Mark Miller 3. So now I can go ahead and assign letter, if I could type correctly, letter B. Successful. Alright, so basically I got a message up there, if you notice that because it really unmounted and remounted the drive as a different letter. So now when I list the volume, it's now listed as B, and if I go to my Windows Explorer, there's Mark Miller 3 listed as drive B. Okay, so let's go back to disk part, and we'll leave that alone. There's nothing more I need to change with letters there. But the other command I wanted to talk about is formatting. You can use disk part to format volumes. It won't let you format C because C is in use, but you could format other volumes, and that's what I'm going to do to Mark Miller 3. Since it's not very big, it won't take it long at all. Now, we still have Mark Miller 3 selected, so all I need to do is type the format command. I'm going to do help format right now, so you can see that there's quite a bit of different options you could select. And at the bottom, first let me just scroll up just to show you. So you can select the type of file system, revision number, if needed. Notice it says if applicable. I've never needed to use that. Recommended, if specified, use recommended file system. A lot of these are optional. So if I'm not going to change the file system, and I don't need recommended necessarily, I can leave all of this stuff off. And in fact, really the only thing you need usually is a label, and you can leave quick off, but it takes longer because when it formats it's going to take longer to zero out information. But if I do a quick, it's basically going to zero out some indexes and won't take as long. Alright, so here's some examples. So the first format is use the file system NTFS, use the label new volume, do it quick, and compress the volume. Well, not compress the volume. If you read up here under help, it says files created on the new volume will be compressed by default. And again, that does save space, but on most drives nowadays, they're so big you really don't need to worry about that. Alright, now you can also do format recommended override, which as you can see with help, forces the file system to dismount first if necessary. So technically you could format the C drive this way, not recommended. If you need to format your boot drive, what you need to do is boot from a separate bootable disk so that everything is dismounted and that operating system is not in use, and then go ahead and format the drive. It's not formatted, it's not recommended, at least not by me, to try to format a drive that is currently in use. Or if you do play with that, make sure you have a good backup. Alright, so let's go about formatting my volume. So for this, I'm just going to use a new label. And one thing I do want to point out is, let me scroll back up. Under label, again, the angle brackets are just to show where you would put information required by that option. In here under label, notice it has double quotes. Those are required. So even if you don't use the equal sign, you still need to put whatever label you're going to use in within double quotes. So I'm going to do Mark Miller 2. Now watch one thing. Notice I've typed Mark Miller 2 all in lowercase. So I'm just going to do quick. And here we go. Shouldn't take too long. Didn't the last time I played with this. And we're done. Disk part successfully formatted the volume. So now when I do a list volume, this is what it shows. I'm still assigned the B drive, but my label is now Mark Miller 2, and there's no other indication that it formatted. This is the only indication you get, is if it was successful, it tells you. Now the reason I wanted you to pay attention to Mark Miller 2 all in lowercase is, if you see here, it's all in uppercase. And again, that has to do with FAT32, which most removable drives are formatted with. What ends up happening is FAT32 did not support upper and lower case for volume names. So they were always created and displayed as uppercase. NTFS supports upper and lower case in your volume names, so that's why you'll see things like local disk for your C drive in both upper and lower case. Alright, so really that's about all I really wanted to show you with the disk part command. As you can see, there's a lot more stuff to use, and I don't believe I'll be using that in any of the other sections for this class, but by section I mean by parts, like part 1, part 2, that sort of thing. But you never know, I may decide later on that under maintenance maybe we could use an example of how you could use that command. Anyway, we'll see later on. So that's all I wanted to show you with disk part. To get out of disk part, all you need to do is simply type exit, and that puts you back to your primary command line window. Alright, now with disk part out of the way, we can start dealing with some of the other commands you use with directories and whatnot. Now, I've used the dir command to display the objects that are within a directory and in other directories. So, one of the things I didn't do with the dir is show you how you can display directories in, yeah, I did. Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking I hadn't used dir with the ... directory to show you, but I did, and I apologize for that. That's why I was kind of scrolling back up as I was talking. So I did do that. What I want to show you now is how you can use a command to move around to different directories. That command's cd. Now, in previous videos, you've seen me use this command primarily just to show you information in other directories quickly. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to start moving around, and we're going to be, I'm going to show you how you can move around quickly to other directories using the ... notation and the partial relative path names. Now, When you want to move to a directory that's directly below you, you simply type in the relative path name, which is the directory name. So if I want to go to Documents, I just simply type cd Documents. I don't have to type in c:\users:\Mark Monica. I can just type Documents. The command line looks at that, interprets that as a relative name, and then determines if it's a file name or if it's a directory. If you try to cd to a file name, it'll give you an error. So if I'll do cd Documents, so now my prompt shows me my absolute path name is c:\users:\Mark Monica \Documents. So if I do dir, here I am. Same place that I showed you before. So how can I use ... Well, let's say I'm done looking in Documents. All I want to do is go back up to my parent directory, Mark Monica. I say cd space ... since that's the link that takes you back to the parent directory, which ... in this case knows to be c:\users:\Mark Monica. So when I do cd ... it takes me back up to Mark Monica. Now, what happens if I want to change directory to public? We already saw that I can use ... \public to display what's in the public directory. I can use the exact same technique to actually go to the public directory. So I can do cd ... \public. And I'm there. Alright. So, is there a simple way to get back to the directory I was previously? No, you do have to use the cd command to move yourself back there, but we can simply go cd ... /Mark Monica, and I can even include the Documents directory here if I want to just simply go directly there. So, now, what happens when you move back and forth between drives? We've seen that all you have to do to move to a different drive letter is type in that drive letter. So I can go from C to E, and it takes me there. Now, what I want to show you is a concept called working directory. And that's what the cd command does. It changes your working directory. So, right now, I'm going to dir, I'm going to change directory to cst120. Again, using a partial path name, a relative path name. It's going to look for cst120 where I currently am, because I haven't specified any other path, and I'm there. Alright, so I'm in E in cst120. If I go back to C, I'm in users Mark Monica Documents. Let me do this. ... with the change directory command moves me back to Mark Monica. What it's done is it's changed my working directory on Mark Monica. So watch what happens when I use the E to go back to the E drive. Remember I said that the default directory for external drives or other drives connected to you is the root directory. So right now it says I'm not in the root directory. I'm in the cst120 directory that I was in before I went back to the C drive. Well, what is happening is that on each drive, the command line keeps track of what working directory you were in on that drive. So when you go back and forth between drives, you don't have to worry about using the change directory command, cd, to move back into a directory you were previously working in. So you can go back and forth between as many drives as you want and you will always get put back into the working directory you were in on that particular drive. Now, so far we've seen that, okay, we can change to a different drive, and then we can change to a different directory on that drive. Is there an easier way? And there is an easier way. What happens when you want to move to a different drive and move directly into that particular directory? Well, there is a switch for the cd command. So, if you look, my previous directory that I left on C drive is users mark Monica. Let's say I want to go back to the documents directory on the C drive. So far what I've shown you is that I have to type C:, and to get to the C drive, and then use the cd command to get to documents. Well, with the /D switch, D as in dog, you can go to a different directory on a different drive and get moved to that drive at the same time. So when I do cd /D C:// users, sorry, I can't see what I'm typing, users /mark Monica /documents, it moves me not only to that different directory, but it moves me to the drive as well. So, what happens when you don't use the /D switch? Well, you can actually change the working directory on a different drive without moving there. So, my other directories I have are CST 134 and 133. So I could say change directory E:// CST 134 FA 110. And when I do that, it does not move me to that other drive. But if I say E now, I'm in that other directory. So the quickest way to move back and forth if you want to change directories is with the /D command. Now notice that I did have to specify the full path name when I use documents, or did I? Notice right now I'm in the E drive, or I'm on the E drive, not in the E drive. Let's say I do want to move back to C, but be in mark Monica. Well, let's see what happens when I specify this. /D C:/. It moved me back. Notice, what did I leave off here? Is when you look at what I typed in, I did not type any /. I just simply included C:, followed by the ... link to the parent directory of documents without any /. So doing that means, how do I say, I'm sorry. So remember, the absolute full path name to a directory or a file starts out with the drive letter, but the next thing is the / that indicates the root directory. So what I've said is C drive, but I didn't specify anything about the root directory. So what I've included here is just the partial relative path name to the parent directory of the directory on the C drive I was in before, the working directory I was in before. That put me back up one level. Now I realize this is kind of weird. This is one of those things where you need to experiment with it just to see what goes on. So if I want to go back to the root level of the E drive, for instance, I don't have to specify the backslash. I could say change directory /d e : .. And because I'm only one level down in the CST134, the parent directory of CST134 FA110 happens to be the root directory. So in this case, that'll take me back to the root directory as well. So using the .. command is very handy for moving around and making it a bit easier for moving around. Now, I'm going to do help cd. There's a few, not too many other commands, but you get some more explanation about moving around. Now notice, down here at the bottom, it talks about directories that have spaces in them. So again, if you have a directory that has a space in it, you have to include double quotes in order to be able to move there. All right? Okay, that's done with the cd command. So we've already talked about the dir command. So I'm just going to type dir right here. I've shown a little bit that you can get information about specific files, like my syllabus. Well, there's another switch to the dir command I haven't talked about. That's the /s as in Sam switch. What that allows you to do is to not only list things in your current directory, but every child subdirectory below you. So right now I'm at the root of the E drive. What happens if I want to look for all the syllabus files I have? So I could use dir /s * syllabus, because I honestly don't remember what characters I have after that. So I'm going to do everything that has syllabus in either a directory or file name. So with the /s switch, it's now going to look in every single directory that I have on this thumb drive. So let me hit enter, see what I get back. So when you do that, it tells you you've got this file in CST120, I've got this file in 134, and this file in 133. So it lets you know what files you have in each of the directory that match the wildcards you've specified. So you can use that for pretty much the /s switch. In this case with dir, you can use that to find pretty much anything you want. So if you're not sure what files you've got where, for instance, you could use it for PowerPoint files, or in this case look up what Word documents do I have in these directories, or depending on what your criteria is. All right, now again, I just want to point out you can do help dir to get all of the different switches possible. All right, now the next command I want to talk about is, since we've been talking about directories, how do you create a new directory? Well, I'm going to go back to C:, and just do dir for a minute. So I'm going to create a new directory. That command is simply mkdir, or you can do just simply md, whichever you prefer. And I talk about that on slide 15. It literally creates directories. So you can create a new directory in your current working directory, or using relative path names, you can create a directory anywhere you want. So if I want to create a directory in documents, and I want to call it test mark, what it'll do is it'll automatically create it in under documents. And when I do dir documents, there's my new test mark directory. Was created when I'm creating this video, Saturday the 19th at about 9:16 p.m. Now remember, just like file names, there are restricted characters you can't use in a directory name. But since you can also create directories with spaces in their names, you could do that, but you'd have to enclose them in double quotes. So let me change this. I can actually create a new directory called test space mark, and it'll go ahead and do it, and there's my new directory, test space mark. But remember, just like with files with spaces in them, you're going to have to always enclose those names with quotes in order to get them recognized by the commands you use. All right. Now, one other thing too is I've talked about creating directories in subdirectories. You can also use ... to create your directories elsewhere. You can also create them on different drives without moving to the drive. So I can say md e:/cst. What I need to do is, you have to be careful here, because right now my working directory on e:/ is, oh, it happens to be root. Okay, here's the deal. When you're referring to, or you want to create something at a specific level, you have to be careful what you specify on the other drives. So the reason I did the dir command was to double check what working directory E was recognizing, and right now it's recognizing the root directory. But md e:/, if I wanted to create something in CST 120, what happens if I'm already in the CST 120 directory? Well, it would create that directory in the CST 120 directory, which may not be what I want. It's easier if I demonstrate this. So let me change my working directory to be e:/CST 120. All right, so now if I do dir e:/, there's inside the CST 120 directory. All right, so I'm going to create a directory. I actually want to put the directory at the root of E. So if I want to create a new directory, e:/CST 177, which is the new Intro to Programming class. What I've done here is I've forgotten to specify the / for the root directory. So what's going to end up happening? I didn't specify the root directory, just like with moving around on E drive and doing a directory listing on the E drive. Forgetting the / will put CST 177 in the current working directory on the E drive, which happens to be CST 120. So let's do that. So of course it works, because that's what I told it to do. And there wasn't any other problems with the command. So now if I do dir e:/, it shows me directory of E / CST 120, and there's my new directory. So when you're putting directories on a remote drive, make sure you specify the complete absolute path name, or know or be completely sure of what the working directory is on that particular drive. So if I do dir e:\\, since I specified a backslash immediately after the colon, it's going to take that as the root directory. So now when I do that, it shows me I now have a CST177 created on the root directory. Alright, now what I'm going to talk about is copies. But what I think I want to do first, though, is I see we're getting a bit long here with this movie. So I'm going to pause this movie, and we'll pick up with the copy command in the third movie for this. So we'll see you in a little bit.